admit people and.
Okay. Well, hi there, folks. Welcome to our webinar today. We're just going to give folks just a minute or two to get registered and get signed into the meeting, and we'll be getting started in just a minute. So thanks. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you very much for taking time out today to join us. My name is Joe Oddie. I'm the Director of Partner Strategies here at EagleView, or Pictometry, as many of you may know us from the past. We're here today to talk a little bit about sketch verification and the value that it can bring to your assessment office. A lot of folks in this webinar may have tried sketch verification before, or maybe done some other type of change detection when it comes to tax assessment. But we're here to talk about just the overall process, the value that it brings, and also a brand new product that EagleView has in this arena here. So the folks that are going to be speaking here, there's me on the left. I'm going to be kind of just doing an intro, going to talk a bit about EagleView. Also with us today, we have Wade Patterson, who was the 2023 IAAO past president. So we have a great guest here today. We're very thankful for Wade for being here and for lending his expertise to this topic. So he's going to talk to you about that sketch verification, the value that it brings. And then to bring it home, we have Elliot Cox, who's our senior product manager here at EagleView, and he's going to be talking specifically about our brand new product called Sketch Inspect and the value that that brings, and give a little live demo of that. So so you guys know, this meeting is being recorded. So if you want to share it with someone else in your office or other folks, you will be provided with a recording following the webinar. Okay, so I kind of already talked a little bit about the agenda. I'm gonna kick it off for in the first 10 minutes or so, talk about EagleView for those of you who may not be familiar with us and what we do. So we'll talk about the imagery that we provide and some other things there. Then Wade's going to talk about that, the importance of having accurate data, and about sketch verification in general. Like, what is it that sketch verification brings to the table? Why is it so important for your office to go through this process? Then, as I mentioned, Elliot's going to bring us in through a demo of our new product. And then at the end, we will have an opportunity for Q&A. So on your Teams meeting, there is questions, and there's Q&A, and there's a chat button. So we have a fourth member of EagleView here, Tim Horak, who is our Director of Marketing, and he is monitoring the chat and the Q&A. So feel free throughout the presentation to throw them in there, and then we'll address those at the end of the webinar, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So again, about EagleView, a lot of folks do know us as Pictometry, so be assured you are in the right webinar. We started our company as Pictometry in the year 1998. So actually just last year, we celebrated our 25th anniversary. We have over 1,000 employees now in multiple continents now. We have headquarters in Bellevue, Washington, and our original headquarters in Rochester, New York. So that's where the whole thing got started back in 1998. We really pioneered the idea of aerial oblique photography, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. But now we've gotten into so much more than just photography, but the imagery, and we are in the software and the analytics and the deriving of information and data from that imagery that we're capturing. So we have everything that we build, everything we have in-house is custom. We are not buying cameras off the shelves. We are building our own cameras. We're calibrating our own lenses. We're building unique mounts that go on aircraft. And the software stacks and the processing and everything that we do is unique to us. So it makes us kind of in control of all the parts that make us work. Our customers seem to love us. We have over a 90% retention rate with our customer base. So once folks sign up with EagleView, they really appreciate the quality that they're getting of the imagery, the accuracy, and the customer support that they're getting here. We do have certified GISPs, folks who are smart with GIS and everything spatial. We have those folks on our staff. And at this point, we are nearing in on 2 billion images in our database. So if we've been capturing imagery for 25 years, you can imagine the volume of images that we have stored in we have the largest library of any aerial provider out there. So most of our folks, especially in tax assessment, have the ability to not only look at what let's say a home looks like, in 2024 or 2023, but then they have access to all this historical imagery to go back in time to see what had changed. And that's important, right? Because you want to check that against your records. What's new about this property? Is there a new shed? Is there a new pool? Is there a new deck? And all those things obviously matter with your the assessed value of a property. And we're covering over 94% of the U.S. population at this point. So we have a very big footprint across the U.S. and Canada. So we do fly very proudly up in our neighbors to the north. So as you can see here, here's our map. So this is a couple of years ago, but it's very similar. We've added a little bit more territory here, but the different colors just simply mean different resolutions and basically the quality of the imagery. But as you can see, where all the population is, we have plenty of imagery. The big open swaths in the west, that's just because the west is very open and there's not as many folks there. So you can kind of see we're all in the concentrated areas. You can see the 94%, and then you can see our footprint up in Canada. So and that continues to grow every year. And again, this imagery is captured by aircraft, and we have over 120 aircraft now in our fleet that is capturing imagery every single day. So what pictometry, when it started, and now EagleView, it really, again, pioneered is the idea of oblique imagery. That's the ability to capture an image from a side angle or a 45-degree angle from an aircraft. So this lends a lot of perspective to a home. A lot of times, if you're looking at, let's say, a satellite image that you might get for free from Google or Bing or something like that, you're really only looking top down. You're only able to see the roof and not really get a lot of detail about the property. But as soon as you flip it on its side, now you understand a lot more about that property. You can understand how many floors it is. You can understand if that front part of the home is a porch, a covered patio, or is that living space. You can see, is that a garage, or is that actually an addition to a house where there could be people living there? All of these things are really important as you're valuing property, in lieu of going out there in person to view this for yourself. We all know that we have small staffs. We may not have enough people to cover our jurisdictions, and you need technology to be able to make your job more efficient. So that's where this imagery really comes in, allows you to evaluate a property with very current and real imagery without having to make as many field visits. And when we capture this view, we're not just capturing from the side angle, one angle, but we're capturing from all 4 cardinal directions. So you can essentially spin the building around and see it from all sides. Everything that you see is metric. That's where the metry comes in pictometry. It has to do with everything that you see, you can measure. So that goes for distance and area, things that you can do on satellite imagery. But one thing you cannot do on satellite imagery is height, because you have this 45-degree angle. You can measure the height of anything, whether that be a building, an eave height, a fence, the height of a door, the height of a window, a tree, a telephone pole, you name it. You're going to be able to measure everything you see, including some more complex measurements, such as grabbing a ground slope. What is the change in elevation between 2 spots? What is the elevation of a location? Can I turn on my contour lines and see what the terrain looks like? Because if I'm approaching a property, I'm maybe planning my day, it'd be really good to know if this building is up on a hill, and that might be a big walk for you if I can't get up there. And just knowing what the terrain looks like is important. Or somebody puts a permit, they want to build on a piece of land. Is that land suitable for building? Is it too sloped? Can I, am I able to build there? Am I going to have to reject that permit because of that? So all these things are real important that you can make these decisions from your desk and not have to go out in the field to get that intel. So now we do capture ortho imagery, top-down perspective. That is, we're not diminishing the importance of that at all, but this is one of our top-down images that we capture. So in our camera rigs, we capture the 45-degree angle, but also the straight down, or we call ortho view. And this is a very high resolution ortho view. And on this image, there are things that you can pick out. If I were just to look at this, I could obviously see where the manhole covers are. I can understand those are traffic poles. And oops, sorry, I gave away the next slide. But you can kind of see some things, but I don't know everything. I can't really understand everything that's going on. But if I take the same intersection now with some of our highest resolution imagery that we offer, this is actually 1-inch imagery. We'll touch on that in a moment. But now I can see so much more detail about this image. I can understand that there's a fire hydrant there. I can read that street sign. I can see that there's actually a sign on the light pole. I can see that there's a skylight on the building and an AC unit. I can see that that's a flagpole. Now imagine if this is a property, an actual residential home or commercial property that you're evaluating. I can understand all the aspects of that. I can understand what the siding looks like. What kind of roof do they have? Where is the input of your utilities, your gas and electric? Again, is that a patio, porch, or actually living space? Because you have this side angle, you can just glean so much more information from an image. And when we contract with our customers, we don't just we'll sell to a tax assessment office and say that's it. We really encourage the sharing of the imagery and the technology across the departments within a county. So even though you guys can have access to it in the assessment office, so can your GIS department, so can your public safety, your 911 teams. Having imagery in your 911 center is extremely valuable. Obviously, tax assessment, we talked about the value there. Public works, the previous slide, all those manhole covers and culverts and drains and street signs, they can find value in it too. So it becomes a shared resource across all county departments and also city departments, so that you can not only use the imagery, but also have funding partners to help pay for it. We do offer a variety of different resolutions of imagery. So you can kind of see the same property in multiple resolutions. So now we are pushing out with our 1-inch imagery, which is really something. It's almost to the point where it's similar to what you can get from a drone, but at a larger scale. Imagine capturing your whole county or your whole city at this resolution and making those decisions that we mentioned earlier. Here's an example of my summer home in Florida. But actually, it's not really my summer home, but it'd be nice if it was. But you can kind of see that. How much detail can you tell from this image? I can see, the type of roof and the type of siding and all the details of the property. Notice that you're still not looking in windows. You're not being able to, read license plates or look at people's faces. It's still not going to be that good. There is a bit of privacy still that is kept, but just all this detail that you can get from all these different departments that can get from this imagery. We also pride ourselves on all the integrations that we have with the different third parties, so that when you are acquiring imagery from EagleView, you can embed it into your existing workflows. So for those of you in tax assessment, you can see all the people that we partner with. Now, that's just a very small grouping of them. These are the larger names. But we have a lot of the state tax CAMA softwares. We work with a lot of different public safety agencies and public works and GIS, and we're a gold member of Esri and all these things. But over 150 different partners we integrate our imagery into to really embed that into your workflow. And here's a more up-to-date or a closer view of our integration with Vision. For those of you on the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic, we have a strong partnership with them, and we can bring our oblique imagery directly into the Vision platform. All right, so that's a little bit of an overview of EagleView. So now I'm going to hand it over to Wade Patterson. And he's going to talk a little bit about the value of sketch verification and also lend some of his expertise in his time in the assessment world. So Wade, go ahead and it's all you.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. As Joe just touched on, his slides, kind of show the latest and greatest from EagleView, but I wanted to give you a history lesson. That's what happens when you're an old guy, you give history lessons. Just to show you the evolution of imagery that we've used in the assessment profession. Next slide, if you would, for me, Joe. There we go. This was a digital ortho quad. This was 4 square miles on one map that was paper. And back in the day, we used to lay these on the floor because if you had to get somewhere like the other side of the lake and you could see it, but you didn't know how to get there, we didn't have any mapping. So you'd lay these out and you would find your route to the other side of the lake. That was paper. It was great to have an image, great to have a picture, but it was not useful at all for physical inspection or measurements. Next slide, we actually transition into our first foray into the digital world. In 95, we received our first aerial images, and we were just elated. You know, you finally had something on your computer that you could use, and it was great, but it was 1 meter plus or minus, so it was this big, every pixel, and we could look at it. Remember, 1 pixel was this big, and we had a wonderful 11-inch monitor back in the day. So we always said, don't zoom in, it's going to look like a checkerboard, and it did. It was digital, great to have on the computer. You could print it out as needed, but again, extremely limited on our availability to visually inspect or to measure. Next slide, we show where we actually transitioned into 2008. Wow, we finally got something in color. That was excellent. Now these were, again, 1 to 2 meter images, and you could look at them, again, just like we did before, on the monitor, and they went from grayscale to color, and it was great. It still looked like a checkerboard, just in color. In that same year, we received our first set of images. Would be the next slide. When we were Pictometry / EagleView, that was the first time that we had such a great product. These were 1 foot images. That was the good resolution back in the day. Now we could actually zoom in and measure with a very small margin of error. And I use this as an example. I had a ballpark here in town, and this ballpark, I asked somebody, how far is it from the pitcher's mound to the point of home plate? And if you know, it's 60.5 feet. So I would zoom in and measure it and drop it, and it came out at 60.5 feet. It sold itself immediately. It was within that half a foot. It was great. And again, no more checkerboard. Now I could actually zoom in. Next slide. This was what sold us. This was the first time we had ever seen oblique images. These were 6-inch neighborhood shots, which again were the best back in the day. And this was amazing. It allowed you and I to go out and walk around the property from the air. As Joe mentioned, you could go all the way around that property at a 45-degree angle. It was phenomenal, and there were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different viewpoints, and we'd never had that before. Phenomenal for assessors for desktop review. As we evolved a little bit farther, you can now see this is what we have today. Now, no, this is not my summer home in Florida, and if you noticed, I've used the exact same slide or the same image target each time. This is a water park we have in Enid, Oklahoma. And most of you are familiar with this. This is 1-inch resolution. And I said, it's amazing. We've gone from 2 meters, and you probably can't see how far my arms go out, 2 meters to 1 inch in just 30 short years. And I realize some of you aren't even 30 years old, but that's the change. So that shows you the evolution of our imagery and what we've been able to do. So our physical inspections, we could actually do a ton right from our computer, which saved us a lot of people time. And that's the most valuable thing as an assessor that we had, was our people. We could actually take the 2 images, split the screen, and slide them back and forth and see the change detection on that. That helped us immensely with data quality and accuracy. But how accurate do we really need to be? And can we automate this process? Well, the next few slides that we're going to show, and I apologize, you're going to notice, and I'm an IAAO Homer. And for those of you that don't know, that's the International Association of Assessing Officers. They write the standards for people in our profession all over the world. So this slide actually shows you, these are the 4 cornerstones. I had 5 fingers up there. I apologize. Assessors are notoriously bad at math. These are the 4 cornerstones that IAAO says will help lead to fair and equitable valuations. These are what the states, the provinces, jurisdictions, cities will base their laws and their rules on. Even if you don't know it, almost all jurisdictions go back to the IAAO standards because it's the gold standard. Again, the first 6 slides I showed you the evolution. The next few slides I'll actually show you the standards and why it's important. We actually have the first mass appraisal standard. And mass appraisal itself is just the process that assessment professionals use for taxation purposes. And when you hear the word ad valorem, that means according to value. And that's what we do, is we appraise property in mass scale, sometimes 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 properties at a time, using these mass appraisal techniques. So your data has got to be uniform. It's got to be clean. It's got to be complete for this automated tool to work. Fee appraisers, on the other hand, will actually use single property appraisal. They're looking at one property, finding comparables. We're looking at a bunch of properties and using sales to actually help us determine the fair cash value. And all appraisal, whether it's mass appraisal or fee appraisal, all of it hinges on complete and accurate data. Right, next screen is the data standard on quality. And believe it or not, there is a standard on data quality. Because you have to know how accurate is my data. That standard actually says, here are the things you need that will eventually help you appraise your property correctly and uniformly. And if you do not have accurate data, this is the most critical part of the process, because this is where it all begins. And remember, garbage in, garbage out, and it will compound itself. The next slide that will go, and it'll kind of be automated. This kind of shows you in a very simplistic way. If I have a 2-foot error in a 50-foot wall, so I've got a 50 foot wide, but I'm off 2 feet. That 2 feet would equal 100 square feet. And that's how we value properties, is based on the square foot. You take that times a 2,000 square foot house, that's a 5% error, 5%. So you're starting out with an embedded 5% error. We need to make sure that we're eliminating as much of that error as we can. One of the things that I actually did on my math is I said, if you took that 100-foot error on, $200 a square foot, and I realized some properties, may sell for $200, $300, $400, $500 a square foot, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, that 100 square feet at a $200 a square foot selling market is a $20,000 embedded error to begin with. Now, look at that on a larger scale. Take this to a Walmart or an industrial complex that's I think we use 500 by 1,000. You can see some of those being $200, $300, $400, $500 a square foot. It just instantly puts an error into your appraisal because you didn't start with the right square footage. So if we have the ability to use a sketch verification and we have the technology to do it, the images, I would say, why in the world wouldn't we do that to help us find the errors? And an error is something we don't know about. If you've got something wrong with your data and you know about it, well, that's your fault. But this will help us determine the things we don't know, which will then help us with those fair and uniform assessments. So that's my spiel as an assessor. So I now just turn this over. I assume it's going to go right to Elliot.
All right, thanks, Wade. Really good information. Helps really focus and help us all understand the importance of accurate data. So with that, we're going to transition into sketch verification, kind of what it is, how it works. Just have a couple quick slides to kind of conceptualize. So what we do with technology is what sketch verification is all about is it's really at a high level, it's a process of taking a building outline geometry and superimposing it, if you will, on top of a sketch outline, right? So we're taking those two objects, those two geometries, and saying, hey, do these match? Do they not match, right? And we go through each record and we flag each property, each parcel to determine whether the sketch is good or whether the sketch is not, right? So using geospatial technology and some proprietary algorithms we've built, we're able to go through and not only tell you which sketches in the CAMA database are inaccurate, But using the building outline data set, we're also able to tell you which sketches may be missing, right? So it's not just comparing the individual building outlines and sketches at a record level, but we're comparing the entire data set, right? So we're picking up on missing items. So high level, that's what our sketch verification products do and the value they bring. Next slide. So just kind of a couple quick things just to kind of lead into the demo. So if I gave you this table and said, hey, tell me which parcels have a matching or a good sketch, this tells you nothing, right? You have to go out into the field, go to each parcel, do the assessment and say, hey, all right, the sketch is good, everything's up to date, we can move on to the next one. But using our algorithms and our technology, if you want to move to the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, we're able to specifically tell you which parcels the sketch is good, which parcels the sketch might have a small issue that you might want to evaluate, or which parcels have a potential major issue and really need your attention, really helping you focus on which properties are the problem children, so to speak. So really what we do is we take this data and we wrap a user interface around it. So if you want to go to the next slide, just a quick visual before I get over to the demo. So this is our Sketch Inspect product. This is our user interface. And really what it does, again, is take that geospatial tabular data, the geometries, what have you, and we wrap a user interface around it. We allow you, make it easy for you to work through each record in your database to really focus in and identify which sketches are missing, which sketches have issues, so on and so forth. Of course, we provide our imagery, the orthos, the obliques, and a front view, as well as all the particulars about the sketch and all that information. So with that, I am going to do a quick demo so you can kind of see how that all works, how it all comes together. All right, hopefully you guys can see my screen. Wait, a thumbs up. All right, so again, yeah, this is Sketch Inspect. This is our sketch verification user interface, right? So just a kind of a quick tour of the application. So upper left-hand corner, we've got the particulars about the property, right? A front view of the image and some of the parcel information. We've got the legend that tells us, right? So if you see on the map, you see some color coding, if you will. So we've styled the sketches to kind of demarcate or classify which sketches are a match, right? The green. You'll see some examples of this orange or amber color of minor mismatches. So there's a calculation that we do that says, hey, the sketch is off by X%. Or these red ones are these major mismatches where there's probably some huge construction that happened that wasn't captured in the CAMA. There are instances where the sketch just doesn't match for one reason or another. And then we do some other delineations around, identifying whether there's no sketch in the database, it's a new building, those types of things. Over to the right-hand side, again, we've got the particulars about the sketch. You can kind of hover over them and they enlarge so you can see the details. But really what this application is all about, again, is as I kind of illustrated on that very crude basic illustration of the tabular data, we're taking, say, a database of, say, 100,000 parcels, right? And we're classifying each record, and this UI applies filters against that data to really help you focus on the problem records, right? So if you've got 100,000 records and really only 20 of them have issues, we really want to drill into those. So we have this filtering UI to where you go over, click this button, and you've got all these different options to help you work through the data set, right? So you can specify locations, parcel types, those types of things. But we have built in what I call preset filters, right? So this drop down at the bottom has some categories of combinations of filters based off of certain criteria that we think are the most important, right? So Number one, new buildings with a sketch issue, right? So some major changes happen there. So we think that is probably the most important to go look at it. Change buildings with sketch issues, so on and so forth. So we've got this list of preset filters. And what you do is you just go select one of those. It pre-populates these filters. We tell it to use the recommended. I'm actually going to change this. And then apply the filter. And what that does, again, is takes the huge data set, drills down and focuses on certain criteria. In this instance, we've got, if you see here, 6 records that meet this criteria where there is basically a new building with a sketch issue. So what I want you to notice here is, right, the main dwelling here is labeled as green. So the main dwelling, the sketch, everything matches up. But what we're picking up on here in this purple outline and the star is we have flagged this as this is a missing sketch in the database, and it's obviously a new building. So one way we can verify that, not only with the imagery you see here, but we have our oblique viewer, right? So we can see from the side angle what this property looks like, okay? So, right, so we can see the main dwelling, we can see this garage in the back. One way we can verify that there is a change, right? So something we need to assess is we can do a side-by-side view and pull up older imagery to see what was there before. So we'll go back to 2018 and see what the imagery looked like before. So this right away, you can see, oh, there's clearly a difference there, right? There's been some construction, new garage before they had a pool and this tiny little shed, and now they've got a huge garage. So what we did there is we created a building outline around that garage. We ran the algorithms. It flagged it. These are not the same, and we color code it, and we allow you to use this interface to work through each record and really focus in on these types of examples to really comb through the records and focus on what you need to focus on. Okay, so all 6 records are going to have similar criteria, right? These are all again, I'll open the filter so we can see what the criteria was. Right, so these are new buildings with sketch issues. Okay, so each one of these are going to have the same criteria. Again, this is the next record in this filter set. Again, the main dwelling, green is good. This purple outline with the star, the sketch was missing. There's a new building, right? So again, same scenario. You can go through, use our oblique viewer. You can see this shed over here. Do the side by side, right? Kind of a repeated process here. We can select the old imagery and we can verify that it wasn't there before. So there you go, right? So really quick and easy. It really cuts to the chase. We've classified each parcel that have issues. We allow you to easily, quickly work through your entire data set to really focus in on the problem records. So some other things we have on this application, right? We've got a dashboard that kind of gives you a breakdown of the project, right? So this demo data set had 94 records, right? Over here, my mouse will work. We've reviewed 14 of them, not reviewed 80 of them, and you kind of see the different user makeup, who's looked at this data set, which ones have been deemed no matches, major mismatches, those types of things. It kind of gives you an administrative view of the entire project, right? We also have, we have a record or database of all the sketches, so you can comb through and look at individual sketches versus going through this user interface, which is more about combining the data with the imagery and the filters, right? So you can look at each individual sketch, you can look at the photos and all the particulars around each project, each building. So that's what I had as far as a quick demo, right? The point of this application is really to make your life easier, to cut through, cut through the database, cut through the data to allow you to focus on the parcels that you need to focus on, right? There's no need to necessarily go to parcels that have had no changes, right? We've done the work for you. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we want to go back to the presentation. Is that correct?
Yep, just 1 second here. Sorry about that, folks. All right.
All right, so we wanted to wrap this section with a kind of an example of the value or the return on investment that this product can bring. Oh, I see.
Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, my bad.
I don't want to see my face twice. Yeah, so this is an example that shows the value of this product, right? So again, we take the parcel data, we create building outlines, we take the sketches, we run the algorithms, and we produce this output, right? And when we hand the project over to you guys, as you start working through it, this is kind of representing the value to what they're experiencing, right? So there was 3 reviewers in this particular project, and on the first day of going through the data set, they found 31 buildings that had issues, which resulted in an increase of $3.2 million of appraised value, right? So it was like 51,000 additional tax revenue. So this is just 3 folks, first day of use, going through the data set, immediate return on investment. So hopefully this really helps illustrate and highlight the value that sketch verification and more specifically Sketch Inspect can bring to you. So with that, I think we want to turn it over to a Q&A section.
Sure. Well, thank you, Elliot, and thank you, Wade, for all of your input on this. It's a pretty exciting product for sure. If anyone has any questions, feel free to add them to the chat or to the Q&A section. While we review these in here, I have a quick question for Wade. Wade, what happens if you don't have technology in your assessment office at this day and age? Like what can be the downfall of not embracing new techniques to evaluate your jurisdiction?
Yeah, great question. And we all face this. And here in Oklahoma, we're no exception. Again, I said earlier, the most valuable thing we have is our people and their time. Without technology, we're constantly spending more time. We're driving places where we're using that extremely valuable asset called our people on the road doing driving. And so the technology helps us maximize our productivity. When I became the assessor of Garfield County in 1997, we had 25 people. And by the time that I retired, as some people say, thankfully, in 2018, we actually had 13. And that wasn't because we were cut down and we didn't have the budget. It's because we had embraced the technological advancements, and EagleView Pictometry was one of our main products we use. So the technology will help us identify stuff so quickly. As a review appraiser, somebody comes in to do a protest hearing with me, I'm blind if I don't have all this information in front of me, but if I can pull up real time the sales in the area and the image, and I can show them the technology, I can usually answer questions without it going on to protest or to court. So that just having the technology is endless. I always said one of the best investments I ever made in my office was a giant monitor that I put on the wall so that the customer, the taxpayer, could actually see what I was doing on my computer. And I would let them pick the sales in the area, and that technology would kick out the actual value of the sales and the comparables. And it solves so many problems. But again, technology itself, especially, people like me that were older, that were a little resistant, has really made a believer out of me that you can do it so much smarter than harder. And so again, it frees up time, and that is the biggest thing I think for most counties, because almost everybody would like to have 1 or 2 more full-time people in their office, and you just can't afford it. And I always used to joke that EagleView Pictometry was my other full-time person in the office.
Great, thank you. We got one question from Q&A asking what the difference is between Change Finder and the sketch verification, Sketch Inspect. I'll handle that one. So The real difference has to do with the data sets that we're analyzing. So for those of you not aware, ChangeFinder is a product that EagleView has had for many, many years. And some of you may have purchased that from us before, where we're creating building outlines on top of recently flown imagery. And we're comparing them against building outlines from a previous collect. So let's say you flew a capture with us in 2021, and then you flew with us again in 2023. We would take building outlines from both data sets and analyze those and tell you where change has occurred. This building is new, this building has changed, this building is demolished, or this building, nothing is different there. That's great, and that's been very successful for a lot of people, but there's a couple inherent issues there. One is that we could be telling you that this is a new building, and you could go through your review, but you've already added this to your role. You've already added this in your system. It's already, permits have been filed, and you know about this new property. The second problem is that it's not looking at any historical inaccuracies. In your camera, like let's say we flew in 2021 and we flew in 2023, it's only telling you the differences between those 2 years. It is not collecting any historical inaccuracies that could be in your camera system from way before that. So if you had a sketch that wasn't accurate, let's say from 2015, then that building is going to be the same in 2021 as it was in 2023, and therefore it's not telling you that there was an error. That's where Sketch Inspect and sketch verification in general comes in, is because it's taking an extract of all of your your sketches from your camera system, and it's analyzing that against a recent flyover. So now, not only are you getting the recent changes, the things that you may not know about, or the inaccuracies in recent sketches, but you're now cleaning up all those really old errors that maybe have just gone, missed in the past, which, happens. You guys have a lot of parcels to review every single year. So those kind of things can happen. So that's really the value that sketch verification brings. It kind of brings you back up to speed and gives you a starting line again, and gets all your historical inaccuracies fixed. And then you can kind of move forward with either product, really, to keep going. So that's kind of the high level overview there. Elliot, can you explain how do we get the sketches into this application in the first place?
Yes, so we work with the sketch providers to obtain the raw sketch extract, right? They come in many different forms, many different formats, and using our technology, our algorithms, we convert those, if you will, into a georeference polygon or georeference data set, right? So at that point, we are then able to do that comparison, right? Because we need the georeference data to run our algorithms to compare the data sets. So we work with each individual vendor. They're all a little different, but that's kind of the part of our secret sauce, is being able to do that.
Okay. We have one from Charles. Can it detect, so I'll stick with you, Elliot. Can it detect 1-story or 2-story from the camera data compared to the image?
Yeah, good question. Since our building outlines are top down, right? So we are building, and this might answer some other questions here. So we create our building outlines from a top down or ortho view, right? So we're tracing or drawing the rooftop. That would not necessarily pick up 1-story versus 2-story. So we are doing a straight building outline comparison to the sketch outline. Now, hopefully that answers your question. I don't, Joe, if you want to add any color to that.
Yeah, it sounds good. And I think it also depends on how you sketch your multiple floors. I think
right.
different jurisdictions will sketch things differently. I don't know, Wade, from your perspective, how have you handled multiple levels, and if you have any thoughts on that with sketch verification?
Yeah, one of the things that depending on how old your system is, and a lot of us did have an older system, you would break your sketches apart, and you would draw your first floor and your second floor differently. One of the other things, and this is where, and I'm working with EagleView on some of these ideas, is when you and I would see a sketch code, if we know what that code is, and it's for a single floor, but if we see it has 2 codes, so it could be a single floor and a second floor or a 2-story, that will be something I think that over time will be something that EagleView will really start looking at as, okay, this isn't the typical code for a single family. It's that plus something. And I think that could be the flag. And again, those are the things where hopefully I'm going to help them with from the assessor side, that you and I, the assessors, say, well, here's how I find things. But I think just if a county or a jurisdiction have the sketch drawn and split, it's kind of easy. But if it's labeled and we don't know the codes, then it would be hard to find out. So that, I think that would be a little more in depth. I assume we could go in at that point and run a search on all the ones that had 2 different codes for living area, if we've got it delineated in the data that we're bringing over and searching against.
Okay, great. Thanks, Wade. Elliot, is there a way to mark a parcel as resolved so it doesn't keep showing up in your list when you filter?
Yes, that's something I didn't cover in the demo. But yes, as you go through each record, if you recall in the lower right-hand corner, as I was scrolling through the records, there is a place where you can add notes to individual records and flag each record as essentially everything is good, or we want to do an office review, or we need to do a field review. So you can go through each record, and as part of your workflow, you can kind of designate what further steps need to be taken.
Okay. We have another question about cost, and it is on a per parcel basis. What we're going to do is we're going to recommend that you reach out to your sales representative to get an official quote, because there is some variance. The reason why I'm not trying to hide our price at all is just that there's a lot of variance there depending on the volume of parcels that you have within your jurisdiction, and then there's some other components to that it just might take a long time to explain, a lot of nuances to it. So for an accurate estimate of what that would cost for your jurisdiction, definitely reach out to your EagleView representative, or you can certainly email us here, myself as joe.adi@eagleview.com, and be happy to kind of funnel that to the appropriate person. So I'll kind of do that.
There's one question I want to address just to make sure, and also kind of to highlight the customizability, if that's the correct word, of each project, right? We work with each customer to understand the particulars of how you assess, right? So there's a question that says, does the sketch checker consider that some items may be on the tax records as an outbuilding or site improvement, but not sketch? So yes, we absolutely can pick up on those things, and that's part of the project management and project configuration as we go through and understand your particular needs. As part of that, we are creating, or as part of our building outline creation process, we can capture and create data down to a very small level, right? So we can pick up on small sheds and things that you might not have sketched. And then once we configure the project, we're able to pick up on those outbuildings and other items like that.
Okay. Another question asks, what type of sketches are compatible? Tyler's iSketch, how is that loaded in EagleView for comparison? So what we do is we actually will look at that. We know that there's a lot of different CAMA flavors out there, and we know, a lot of the larger ones we've had samples of. So what we need to do is when we first encounter a CAMA system for the first time, we need to get a sample of those sketches just to understand how they're made, how do they build, how do they work, and then we kind of analyze that and make sure we understand how that works. So we can, I hesitate to say a broad statement, we'll work with every single flavor. But what we do is we do a quick analysis of a sample set for the first time we encounter that CAMA system, and then say we maybe work with the CAMA system directly to understand the ins and outs of that sketch. Once that's done, we kind of put them on an approved list. Like, this is a group of sketches that is approved, and that is a constantly evolving list. So especially with this being a new product, right now we have about 20 or so CAMA vendors that we are 100% confident in and can work with. A lot of the big ones, Tyler is one of those. But some of the smaller ones, if you guys are working with a different sketch provider, then we'll work with you guys, and we'll eventually get to that point. But we just have to kind of get some samples over to be analyzed and make sure we understand the ins and outs, and then we'll be able to move forward. So that's kind of it's kind of an evolving thing there.
There are some questions around kind of SLA, how the timing of it all works. So I'll say it depends, right? So the building outlines are created off of our imagery, right? So whether you have existing imagery with us or whether we're waiting for a new flight, that's going to determine and be one of the big gating items for how this project plays out. So if we have the imagery and we're ready to go and we're ready to create building outlines, depending on the volume, can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a month to create. And then once we have that and we've got all the particulars in order to produce the project, it only takes about a week to run all the algorithms and produce the output and get the data loaded into the application.
One question about how often would an update take place? Monthly, or is it a yearly basis? So I'll handle that one. That really is based on the frequency of your flyovers with EagleView. So some of our jurisdictions will fly with us multiple times in the same year. Some will fly annually, some will fly every 2, some will fly every 3. So that really is up to you, up to our customers to dictate how frequently we do fly. And that's usually based on budget allowance. It's based on your need. You know, if you have a county or a city that doesn't change very much, maybe you don't need it every year. Versus an area that is experiencing a lot of growth, you might want it every year. But whatever your cadence is with us, we can tack on the Sketch and Spec product to every flight. So you could have it as often as you fly with us, really. And that's again really up to you and the budget allowance and all those things. Just looking through here. Sorry, I'm just going through these here.
Question just came in, is the building outline that's created included as part of the deliverable? Yes, we can deliver both shape files of the building outline as well as the georeference sketch data that we create.
We had a question about are the measurements done on the rooftop or the ground level? All of our measurements that are linear are at ground level measurements. So it's always a good best practice that when you're measuring the side of a building to be closer to the ground, because it is measuring on the ground. But again, remember, because we have the oblique perspective, we can also measure vertical as well. So we can measure the height of things. So, but yeah, so now we do have separate tools in our kind of our browser application that can measure slope of roof and other types of things that are off the ground. So those are possible. But for the general, you know, if you're just using a distance tool or an area tool, those are always ground level measurements. So the closer you get to the ground, the better. But if you have a 2-story building and you're measuring up there on the 2nd floor, it's extremely similar. It's very, very little variation there between 1 floor and 2. If you're on a 60-floor skyscraper, that might make a difference at the very top of the building versus the bottom. But for most residential homes, that's not an issue at all. So Jack asked, do we have to use your imagery? Well, that's kind of part of the whole process. So I'll say yes to that, because we do need to do the capture, and then we are building the outlines for this process off of our collect, and then off the flight that we do, and then we're and taking your sketches and doing the analysis of that. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the big things there is that we can't guarantee the accuracy and overall clarity of a third-party imagery set. So, you know, as Wade showed an example, every inch matters as far as accuracy of the data, which translates to the fair value of the tax assessment. So if we're using a third-party imagery set and it's not of the greatest quality, then our building outlines are only so accurate, and the ripple effects, right? So really stress using our data. It's the highest quality. We can guarantee the accuracy of it, the clarity of it, all those things.
And then this is one thing I wanted to touch on. Could you, obviously, we had a couple people pick up on the fact that a sketch is based on livable space within a property. A building outline is an ortho top-down view of the outside edge of a property. And there's a little bit of variance there, right? Because you have eaves and overhangs of buildings and such. So how are we accounting for that, Elliot, when we have something that has overhang versus a livable space sketch?
Right, that's part of the part of the project setup, right? So we go through and really understand how the property is broken up on an individual component basis, and then we configure the algorithms to compare the building outline polygon or polygons that may be on your parcel to you know, each individual aspect or each individual component of your property. So we definitely account for all the different variabilities. Again, every county is different. So we are very customizable and flexible when it comes to that. Hope that answers the question.
I think we answered that one. Okay. Will there be an option to download sketches in monthly intervals to be current with workload?
That's all going to depend on how frequently you want to purchase and run one of these projects. So the sketches and building outlines are created on a project by project basis. They're not continuously curated for like an on-demand type scenario. So if you run a sketch and spec project annually, then you will get them annually. If you want to run them every 6 months, so on and so forth.
Okay, and here's another one we got in. We only sketch main buildings. Will this automatically flag all of the outbuildings that are not sketched?
Yes, because we create building outline geometries down to, it's actually a configurable level, but the default is 100 square feet, but we can go even smaller based off of needs. So again, using the building outline data set that has not only the main dwelling, but every structure of a certain size, and then comparing it to the CAMA records, we're able to flag those discrepancies.
Right, and then even if you aren't necessarily sketching that outbuilding, Wade, maybe you can touch on this briefly as we got a few minutes left. I know that some assessment offices, instead of having, they'll just put the dimensions. They don't need a sketch. Maybe
Right.
if it's like a shed or something like that. And I believe that our polygons will have those dimensions on them, so that you can just know that. So I don't know if, Wade, in your experience, how do you handle outbuildings of smaller type?
Well, one of the rules I had in my jurisdiction was we measured and sketched everything, even if it had no value, because as we're doing our visual inspection through the years, we're going to go back out every 4 years. So in 8 years, I need to know that that building was there. And we also tried to get them kind of laid out in the pattern they set in relation to the main structure. That way it was easier to find, and I could visually and see something and say, okay, that's the one that's no value that's on here. But we did try to make sure we had all of them sketched. And sometimes they're just so big. Our old system in the day did not have the ability to sketch them all because it had too many calls in it, and you were limited in DOS as to how many calls you made. So we tried to sketch everything, even if it did or did not have a value. And one of the things I love, and I've asked the guys about this, is you and I as assessors, if I know I'm looking in a certain area and I've got a newer part of town and then I've got the original part of town, I can look and tell Elliot, okay, I've got this area that's all 1900 to 1920 bungalows that had 2.5 foot overhangs on the houses. That is information you would give to the person that's running your project, and that they could build that algorithm to say, okay, this is an older area, so you're going to have some differences of overhang, and build that in, versus a new house that may not have that kind of overhang. So again, I think that's the customizable piece, is you will get to know, working with your service provider and your CAMA system, and your EagleView folks, here's what I'm looking for. Here's my nuances. And you'll, like we do neighborhoods, you will have nuances that you will work through with your EagleView folks to say, in this area, watch for this. In this area, watch for this. And then, so I love the possibilities. I get going on it and I'm like, oh, I could use it for this and this and this. So.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Elliot, are we able to find discrepancies like patios?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Wade was touching on there, right? So yes, again, it's on a, I would just say it's on a customer by customer basis. It depends on how you want, what things you want to pick up on, how you want to, what you want to compare, if you will. So depending on what you're assessing, things like patios, covered porches, those types of things, we can configure it to pick up on those types of discrepancies. So there's no like blanket default answer. That's kind of, maybe you're picking up on that. It's a highly configurable algorithm or set of algorithms.
Okay, folks, we're nearing the end here. Thank you very much for all the great questions and the chat and the comments. A couple things I want to draw your attention to in the chat. Tim has put in there a map. So if you are not currently an EagleView customer and you'd like to speak to someone about a flyover or the cost of Sketch Inspector, any of those questions that we maybe didn't answer today, there's a map that is on there that you can click that map. and it'll give you, you can click on any state and it'll give you our 2 representatives for that particular state. So feel free to reach out. Those are our sales folks for that state, and they're happy to talk with you. Also in the chat, I put myself and Elliot's email address. So if you'd like to reach out with us directly, we can either funnel your question elsewhere, or we're happy to answer those for you. So we had a great attendance. Really appreciate your time today. I know you're all very busy folks, and really appreciate all your attention and your questions. So thank you very, very much. This will be recorded. We'll send out a recording afterwards, and we really hope that you enjoy the webinar and that you have a great rest of your day. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.